Everyone talks about wanting to change their life. They fantasize about the version of themselves that has it figured out. The money, the freedom, the purpose. The one who wakes up and actually wants to be alive. But that fantasy leaves out the truth. The real truth is darker. There is a book sitting on a shelf right now in more than 4 million homes across the world. Continuously in print since 1946. Never debunked, never explained away, never gone out of style. And almost nobody talks about what's actually inside it. Steve Jobs kept this book on his desk for the last decade of his life. His personal copy found underlined on nearly every page. Bill Gates called it the most important book he has ever read. Paul McCartney said it permanently changed what he understood about reality. Three of the most consequential minds in modern history. One book. These are not soft people. These are not superstitious people. These are people who built empires, rewrote technology, and changed culture permanently. And they all arrived at the same place. Now here's what nobody tells you. I'm not going to give you a safe summary of this book. That version keeps it harmless, interesting, inspiring, and ultimately useless. I'm going to tell you what it actually documents, what it proves, and why, if even a fraction of it is true, you have been solving the wrong problem your entire life. The book is called The Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And here is what they were seeing inside it. The book documents, with named witnesses, verifiable dates, and signed, notarized letters, events that have no business being physically possible. A woman named Giri Bala consumed 0 food and 0 water for over 50 years. Not reduced intake. 0 food, 0 water for over half a century. She was investigated by the Maharaja of Burdwan, examined by multiple physicians. Her case was documented. When Yogananda finally found her and asked how, directly, face to face, she described a specific yogic technique she had been taught as a young woman that redirected her body's dependence from external food to an internal source of energy. She didn't call it miraculous. She called it a science she had learned and practiced. A saint named Swami Pranabhananda appeared in 2 separate cities at the exact same moment, not one account. Multiple independent witnesses in both locations simultaneously, with no possibility of travel between them. The word for this is bilocation. And Yogananda does not present it as a miracle. He presents it as a predictable consequence of a specific understanding of the relationship between consciousness and form. The saint had learned something about the nature of physical existence that made the assumption of one body in one location stop being a law and start being a choice. A yogi physically rose off the ground during meditation. Not symbolically, not metaphorically. His body left the earth. Witnesses present. Documented. Yogananda describes it the way an engineer describes a plane taking off, not with wonder, but with the matter-of-fact clarity of someone describing a result they expected from a process they understood. And then there is the event that has never been explained away. Yogananda's own guru, Sri Yukteswar, died. His body was taken to a mortuary. What happened in the days that followed was documented by the mortuary director in a signed, notarized letter that was subsequently published and reported in Time magazine. The body showed 0 signs of physical decay. Not slowed decay, 0 decay, for 20 days. That letter exists. It is not disputed. It has never been refuted. It simply sits there, in the record, unexplained. Now here is where most people make the critical mistake. When they encounter evidence like this, they do one of 2 things. They dismiss it as fraud or they mystify it as miracle. Both responses are identical in their effect. Both let you stay exactly where you are. Both prevent you from asking the only question that actually matters. What if it's neither? What if these events are not fake and not miraculous, but simply the documented results of a science that most of the world abandoned before it could understand it? Yogananda treated them exactly that way. He said, "Here is what happened. Here is the mechanism behind it. Here is the ancient framework that predicted it 2,000 years before it was witnessed. And here is why it is repeatable by anyone willing to do the work. That framework is the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, written approximately 2,000 years ago. 196 verses, and encoded inside those verses, with the precision of a technical manual, is a complete map of the relationship between consciousness and physical reality. Patanjali did not call these events miracles. He called them siddhis, perfections, natural outcomes. He listed them the way a chemistry textbook lists reactions, not as wonders but as predictable consequences of understood processes applied correctly. He described levitation with the same clinical language he used for concentration. He described living without food with the same matter-of-fact tone he used for breathing. He described bilocation as a natural extension of a sufficiently developed understanding of the self. His central claim, the claim that every tradition from Hermetic Egypt to Zoroastrian Persia to Taoist China was pointing at independently, from completely different directions, using completely different language, is this: physical reality is not the foundation. Consciousness is the foundation. Physical reality is downstream, and a consciousness that has been trained to sufficient depth can alter what appears downstream in ways that the untrained mind can only categorize as impossible. That's the claim. And the question I want you to sit with right now, before we go any further, is not whether you believe it. The question is, what would it mean for your actual life if it were even 30% true? Because if consciousness creates reality even partially, then most of what you're doing to change your life is aimed at the wrong layer. You're working on the screen while the projector runs unchanged. You're rearranging the furniture of your life while the blueprint underneath it keeps producing the same floor plan. That's what we're going to talk about. And it is going to cost you something to hear it. I want to name something that you have felt, but probably never been given accurate language for. There is a version of stuck that isn't laziness. It isn't lack of information. It isn't even lack of effort. You are working. You are trying. You have read the books, implemented the systems, taken the courses. And you are still hitting the same ceiling, the same income level, the same relationship dynamic with different people, the same pattern of self-sabotage at exactly the moment things start to go well. You have been told this is a discipline problem, a mindset problem, an execution problem. It is none of those things. What Yogananda understood, what Patanjali mapped with terrifying precision 2,000 years ago, is that every stuck point in a human life is the surface expression of a pattern operating at a layer the conscious mind cannot directly access. You cannot see it from where you're standing. You cannot think your way to it. And every solution you apply at the surface level, more effort, better strategy, new environment, will fail to move it because you are not working at the layer where it lives. Here is the most uncomfortable thing the autobiography of a yogi contains. Not the levitation, not the bilocation. This. Yogananda describes in precise detail how the external world a person inhabits is, at every moment, a perfect mirror of the internal world they are running. Not a rough approximation, not a general tendency, a perfect mirror. The quality of your relationships reflects the quality of your relationship with yourself. The ceiling on your income reflects an internal belief about what level of reality belongs to someone like you. The health problems that keep recurring reflect patterns of energetic stagnation in specific areas. The obstacles that appear repeatedly in slightly different forms are the same internal pattern, wearing different costumes, trying to get your attention. This is what the yogic tradition calls karma, not karma as moral punishment, not karma as a cosmic score sheet, karma as precise feedback. The universe is a system that returns to you, in external form, the exact content of your internal state, with the specificity and accuracy of a mirror, without exception. And here is why this is the most important thing anyone has ever told you about why you're stuck. If your external life is a mirror of your internal state, then changing the external without changing the internal is not just ineffective, it is impossible. The mirror will update to match the state every time. You leave the relationship and find the same dynamic with a new person. You change jobs and recreate the same frustrations with a new team. You move cities and bring your patterns with you. The mirror updates, the reflection changes, the pattern underneath does not. This is what the book documents through story after story. Yogananda encounters people who have been trying to change their external circumstances for decades. Wealthy people who cannot find peace. Intelligent people who cannot find direction. Disciplined people who cannot find fulfillment. And in each case, the teaching is the same. You are working on the reflection. The work is in the source. But here is the part nobody tells you about this teaching. Because it sounds empowering. You create your reality, therefore you can change it. But it has a shadow side that will hit you like cold water. If your external life is a perfect mirror of your internal state, then you are responsible for all of it. Not some of it, all of it. The things you're proud of and the things you're ashamed of. The successes and the failures. The people who hurt you and the patterns that led you to them. This is the most confronting idea in the entire yogic framework. And it is also the most liberating, because responsibility is the only thing that gives you power. The moment you accept that the source of your circumstances is internal, you gain the ability to change them in a way that no amount of external effort could ever give you. Most people will not accept this. It is too confronting. It is easier to maintain that the world is doing things to you, that the ceiling is the economy, or the competition, or the timing, or your background. These explanations feel true because they contain surface evidence, but they are not the cause. They are the reflection. The cause is always upstream. And Patanjali spent his entire life mapping exactly how to get there. I need to stop and tell you something about Patanjali that almost no one in the Western conversation about yoga ever mentions. Patanjali was not a spiritual teacher, in the way we use that term today. He was a scientist, a systematizer, a man who took the accumulated experimental results of thousands of years of inner investigation by hundreds of yogis across multiple traditions and encoded them into 196 verses with the precision and economy of a mathematical proof. The Yoga Sutras is not a spiritual text. It is a technical manual. It describes specific inputs, specific processes, and specific outputs. It describes the equipment required, the conditions necessary, the stages of development, the obstacles that arise at each stage, and the results that are inevitable when the process is correctly applied. Patanjali does not say perhaps or in some cases. He says, do this under these conditions for this duration, and these results will follow, inevitably. The same way a physicist says, apply this force to this mass for this duration, and this acceleration will result, inevitably. The central discovery, the thing Patanjali is building the entire system around, is this. The human mind, in its ordinary state, is running an enormous amount of energy through a very small and very noisy processing system. The surface mind, what you experience as your thoughts, your reactions, your planning, your worrying, is like a generator running at full capacity, while most of its output is being lost to heat. Most of the energy generated by your consciousness is leaking into reaction, into rumination, into the constant low-grade static of a mind commenting on everything it encounters. And beneath that noise, beneath the surface chatter, beneath the reaction, beneath the endless commentary, there is a layer of awareness that is categorically different in its quality, its power, and its relationship to physical reality. Patanjali calls this deeper layer Purusha, pure consciousness, the witness, the field of awareness that underlies all experience without being defined by any of it. And his entire system, the 8 limbs, the practices, the stages, is a precise protocol for making your way from the surface noise down to that deeper layer. Here is why that matters. The surface mind, the noisy, reactive, commentary-generating mind, has a specific relationship to physical reality. It experiences reality as something that happens to it. External events occur, the mind reacts. Circumstances arise, the mind responds. The surface mind is fundamentally at the effect end of reality. Things happen and it processes them. The deeper layer, the Purusha, the pure awareness, has a completely different relationship to physical reality. It is not at the effect end. It is, in Patanjali's framework, at the causal end. The field of pure awareness is not downstream of physical reality. Physical reality is downstream of it. This is the inversion that changes everything. And before you dismiss this as mysticism, consider what quantum physics has been saying for a century. The observer effect, the experimentally verified, repeatedly confirmed, cannot be explained away discovery that the act of observation changes what is observed at the quantum level, is not a metaphor. It is a measurement. The act of conscious observation literally alters the behavior of physical particles. Reality, at its most fundamental level, is not independent of consciousness. It is responsive to it. Patanjali knew this 2,000 years before the double-slit experiment. He had mapped it, not theoretically, but empirically, through thousands of experiments conducted by people who had trained their consciousness to the level where the relationship between awareness and physical reality became directly observable. The siddhis, levitation, bilocation, living without food, reading minds, knowing the future, are not the goal of the system. They are the evidence. They are what happens when a consciousness has been trained deeply enough that the boundary between the observer and the observed becomes fluid. They are the extreme end of a spectrum that begins with ordinary improvements in perception, intuition, and the ability to direct one's life, and extends in people who have gone all the way to phenomena that have no framework in ordinary physics. Yogananda documents them not to impress you. He documents them as proof of concept, as evidence that the spectrum is real, as a demonstration that if the extreme end is possible, and he provides documented, witnessed, notarized evidence that it is, then the ordinary end of the same spectrum is not just possible for you. It is available right now, today, with the correct practice. The ordinary end of the spectrum is this: a consciousness that has been trained even partially toward its deeper layer begins to experience reality differently. Problems that seemed fixed begin to move. Patterns that seemed structural begin to dissolve. Opportunities appear that were invisible before. Not because the world changed, but because the perceiver changed. Decisions become clearer. Relationships become more honest. The gap between intention and result begins to close with a consistency that cannot be explained by effort alone. That is what Patanjali is offering. That is what Yogananda documented. That is what this system, correctly applied, actually does. And here is the terrifying part. It requires you to go somewhere most people will never go. Not somewhere exotic, not somewhere distant, somewhere immediately available and almost completely avoided. Somewhere inside yourself that is deeper than your thoughts, quieter than your reactions, and more real than anything the surface mind has ever shown you. Most people will not go there, not because it's difficult, though it is, because going there means encountering what you've been running from. And what you've been running from is the actual source of everything that isn't working in your life. That's the cost. That's always the cost. Clarity is free. What you'll find in the clarity is not. I'm going to give you the specific discoveries from the Autobiography and the Yoga Sutras that nobody in the mainstream conversation ever talks about. The ones that, once understood, make the popular self-help conversation look like people arguing about furniture arrangement in a burning building. Secret 1. Your thoughts are not private. In the Autobiography, Yogananda documents repeated instances of yogis reading the thoughts of people around them with precision, not vaguely sensing emotion, reading specific thoughts. He describes his own guru, Sri Yukteswar, correcting him for thoughts he had not spoken, sometimes thoughts he had barely formed. He describes saints who, upon meeting a stranger for the first time, named specific memories, specific fears, specific patterns the person had never shared with anyone. Patanjali encodes this as a siddhi in the Yoga Sutras, direct knowledge of another's mind. He describes it as a natural consequence of a specific stage of development, the same way eyesight is a natural consequence of having functioning eyes, a faculty that becomes available when the noise level of your own mind drops below a certain threshold. Here's what that means for you. The people around you are receiving your internal state, whether you express it or not. Your anxiety in a negotiation is legible. Your doubt in a sales call lands before you speak. Your resentment in a relationship transmits whether or not you say the words. You are broadcasting continuously, and the people around you are receiving it at levels below their conscious awareness and responding to the transmission, not the performance you're putting over the top of it. This is why the most charismatic people in any room are not necessarily the most skilled performers. They are the people whose internal state is genuinely coherent. What they broadcast and what they say are the same thing. There is no gap between the transmission and the words, and people feel that coherence without being able to name it. Secret 2. Time is not what you think it is. In the Autobiography, Yogananda documents yogis who knew the future, not vaguely, specifically. His own guru told him, years before it occurred, exactly what a major life event would be and the date it would happen. It happened on that date. This isn't presented as prophecy in the religious sense. It's presented as a consequence of accessing a layer of reality where linear time is less binding than it is at the surface level. Patanjali encodes this too. Knowledge of past and future is listed as a natural outcome of samyama, a specific advanced practice, on the sequential nature of time. He describes it with the same clinical language he uses for everything else. This result follows from this practice: expected, repeatable. The practical implication for your life is this: every significant outcome in your life was preceded by a period of internal preparation or internal obstruction that determined the result before the external circumstances were even visible. The business failure that seemed to come from nowhere was preceded by months of internal misalignment that was broadcasting the result before the event. The relationship that ended was preceded by patterns that made the ending inevitable before either party consciously acknowledged it. Your future, right now, is being determined by the internal state you are running today, not mostly, entirely. Secret 3. The body is not solid. One of the most difficult events in the autobiography to dismiss is the appearance of Sri Yuktaswar to Yogananda after death. Not a vision, not a dream. Yogananda was fully awake in a hotel room in Bombay when his deceased guru appeared. Physically, materially, in a body that could be touched and held. The encounter lasted an extended period. Yogananda documents the conversation in detail. The guru explained the mechanism. The same consciousness that had inhabited a physical body could, through specific understanding of the relationship between awareness and matter, reconstruct a material form at will. Patanjali describes this as nirmana chitta, the ability to create bodies. He lists it without drama, as a natural advanced outcome of the practice. Here is what that tells us about the body you're currently living in. It is not the fixed, solid, deterministic biological machine you've been told it is. It is, at its deepest level, a pattern of energy held in a specific configuration by a pattern of consciousness. Change the consciousness pattern deeply enough, and the energy configuration changes with it. This is not metaphor. Spontaneous remissions from terminal illness, documented, witnessed, medically inexplicable, are not anomalies. They are data. They are low probability but real events where something in the consciousness pattern of a person changed profoundly enough that the physical pattern updated to match. Yogananda documents healing after healing throughout the autobiography. Not through medicine, through a direct intervention at the causal level. The healer didn't treat the body. The healer accessed the consciousness pattern generating the physical condition and changed it upstream. The body updated downstream. This is the mechanism. It is documented. It is witnessed. It is real. Secret 4. Energy is the currency of reality, and you're spending yours on nothing. In the Autobiography, Yogananda describes in detail a practice called Kriya Yoga, a specific breathing and meditation technique that his lineage had preserved and transmitted for centuries. He describes it as the most powerful technique available for accelerating the development of consciousness. Babaji, a figure in the lineage described as having maintained a physical body for centuries through specific practices, told Lahiri Mahasaya, Yogananda's grand guru, that Kriya Yoga was the same science Krishna had described to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita 5,000 years earlier, and that Christ had taught his apostles privately after the resurrection. This single claim, that the same inner technology runs through Krishna, Christ, and a living yogi in 19th century India, is one of the most extraordinary in the entire book. Not because it's romantic, because it suggests that something very specific and very precise has been known, preserved, and transmitted continuously for at least 5,000 years. And that what most of the Western world has received of these traditions is the outer shell, the ritual, the doctrine, the institutional form, while the inner technology was transmitted privately to people who were prepared to use it. What is the inner technology? At its core, it is this: the human energy system has a direction. In ordinary life, energy flows outward, into sensation, into reaction, into the senses, into the world. This outward flow generates the experience of being a person in a world of circumstances. It generates the feeling of being subject to reality rather than the source of it. Kriya Yoga, and the broader system of practices it belongs to, reverses this direction. It draws energy inward and upward, through the spine, through the chakra system, toward the higher centers of consciousness. And as the energy moves in this direction, the relationship between consciousness and reality begins to shift. The practitioner stops experiencing themselves as subject to their circumstances and begins experiencing themselves as the source of their circumstances. Not as a philosophy, as a direct, felt, unmistakable shift in the quality of consciousness itself. Secret 5. The guru is not who you think. One of the most misunderstood aspects of the autobiography, and of the yogic tradition generally, is the role of the teacher. Western readers tend to read the guru relationship through the lens of authority, dependency, or religious devotion. They miss what it actually is. Yogananda describes his relationship with Sri Yukteswar in terms that are specific and illuminating. The guru's function is not to give you information. It is not to give you practices, though practices are given. The guru's function is to transmit a state of consciousness directly, to give your own deeper awareness a direct encounter with what a fully developed version of itself looks like. This transmission functions like a tuning fork. When a tuning fork at 440 Hz is struck next to a string tuned to 440 Hz, the string begins to vibrate without being touched. The resonance is direct. The transmission is real. This is why Yogananda describes being changed by his guru's presence before any teaching occurred. The state itself was transmissible. The advanced consciousness in proximity to the developing consciousness raises the frequency of the developing consciousness directly, bypassing the ordinary mechanisms of learning entirely. The practical implication: environment is not background. The people you spend time with are not neutral. They are active, continuous, powerful transmissions of a specific quality of consciousness. The person whose internal state is chronically anxious, contracted, and small transmits that state to everyone in their proximity. The person whose internal state is genuinely expanded, clear, and aligned transmits that state. You are being shaped continuously by the field of every person you spend significant time with. This is not metaphor. This is the mechanism Yogananda describes in technical detail throughout the book. Secret 6. Sleep is a state of samadhi you're entering accidentally every night. This one stopped me completely when I first encountered it. Yogananda describes samadhi, the deepest state of meditation, the state in which the boundary between individual consciousness and universal consciousness dissolves, as structurally related to deep sleep. The yogis describe deep dreamless sleep as an unconscious version of the same state the advanced meditator enters consciously. In both states, the surface mind goes offline. In both states, the individual sense of self dissolves. In deep sleep, this happens accidentally, without awareness, and the person wakes up refreshed but with no memory of the state and no development from it. In samadhi, it happens consciously, with full awareness, and the person returns from it permanently changed. The difference between an ordinary night of sleep and a session of deep meditation is not the state itself. It is the quality of consciousness entering the state. When a trained, developed consciousness enters the deep silence, it encounters what's there with awareness. It can work in that space. It can bring intention to the causal level. It can change the pattern at the source. When an untrained consciousness enters the same silence, it experiences nothing. It wakes up having lost 8 hours, but not having used them. This reframes the entire practice of meditation. You are not trying to achieve a special state. You are trying to develop the consciousness that can enter the state you enter every night with enough awareness to do something useful there. Secret 7. The real reason your manifestation doesn't work. This one will hit the people who have been in the law of attraction world the hardest. In the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali describes sankalpa, intention, with a precision that the popular manifestation conversation never approaches. He distinguishes between surface intention and deep intention. Surface intention is the conscious desire, the visualization, the affirmation, the goal written on the notepad. Deep intention is the actual instruction being sent to reality by the full field of your consciousness, including and especially the parts you cannot consciously access. Here is the problem. Most people's surface intention and deep intention are in direct conflict. You consciously intend to build wealth. Your deep intention, encoded in a belief formed at age 9 when your family treated money as shameful, or at 12 when you watched your parents fight about it, or at 22 when your first business failed and your nervous system logged that reaching for money produces pain. Your deep intention is to stay safe. And safe, in the encoded definition, means not having enough money to require the vulnerability that comes with it. The surface intention goes into the goal-setting app. The deep intention runs the show. This is why people who implement every manifestation technique still hit the same ceiling. The technique is addressing the surface. The ceiling is in the deep, and the deep will always win. Because the deep is where actual reality is being generated. The surface is commentary. Patanjali's system is specifically designed to access the deep intention, not to affirm over the top of it, not to override it with positive thinking, to go there directly, see it clearly and change it at the source. This is the only way the ceiling actually moves. The practices do this. The specific practices of deep self-inquiry, sustained meditation, and the systematic withdrawal of energy from the surface patterns that are generating the stuck points. This is the work. It is not glamorous, it is not fast, and it is the only thing that actually works. There are 2 ways to move through life. Patanjali names them. Yogananda demonstrates them, and almost everyone you have ever met is using the wrong one. The first is personal intention. The force of your individual will apply to a desired outcome. I want this. I will make it happen. I have a plan. I will execute the plan. I will measure progress. I will push harder if I'm not getting results. This is how most of the achievement culture runs. It's the energy of the person who gets up at 5 a.m. and posts about it. The person who outworks everyone and measures the result every Friday. The person who treats every setback as a reason to apply more force. This mode of operating has real results. up to a point, up to the precise limit of your personal energy, your personal leverage, your personal ability to see and plan. And when you hit that limit, and everyone hits it, the only tool you have left is more of the same thing that already isn't working. The second mode is what Yogananda calls outer intention, and what Patanjali encodes in the concept of Ishvara Pranidhana, surrender to the universal intelligence. And this is where the teaching will lose most people, if I don't explain it carefully. This is not passivity. This is not giving up. This is not pretending not to care about results. It is the recognition, not philosophical, experiential, that there is an intelligence operating in reality that is orders of magnitude larger, faster, and more capable than the individual mind. It built the universe. It runs every biological process in your body without you managing a single instruction. It is coordinating right now, in this moment, more variables simultaneously than the most powerful computer on Earth could calculate in a millennium. And it is not external to you. It is the deeper layer of you, the Purusha, the field of pure consciousness beneath the surface noise. Personal intention is the wave trying to move the ocean. Outer intention is the wave recognizing it is the ocean and drawing on that recognition to move. The practical difference is enormous and immediate. When you operate from personal intention, the energy you bring to a goal is entirely self-generated. You are the engine, and you are a finite engine. You deplete, you plateau, you burn out. The results you achieve are bounded by your capacity to generate and sustain force. When you operate from outer intention, when you have done enough inner work to access the deeper layer and act from there, the energy you bring to a goal is not self-generated. It comes through you. You are not the engine. You are the channel. And the source feeding through you is not finite. The results accessible from this mode of operating are not bounded by what your individual mind could plan or your individual will could sustain. Yogananda documents this in almost every chapter of the Autobiography, through examples that seem like coincidence until the pattern becomes unmistakable. The right person appears at the exact necessary moment. The exact resources required manifest from unexpected directions. Obstacles dissolve before they fully form. Not because the yogi is lucky, because the yogi has learned to operate from the layer of reality where these things are coordinated. And operating from that layer puts you in alignment with a force that is not subject to the limitations of personal will. Here is the paradox you must understand to access this. The outcomes available through outer intention are vastly larger than anything personal intention could achieve. But they are not available to personal intention. They require the one thing personal intention cannot produce by force: genuine surrender of the outcome, not performed surrender, not strategic detachment, genuine, real, bone-deep release of the specific form the result takes. This is the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita that Yogananda returns to repeatedly throughout the book. Act with full commitment. Give everything to the process, and release the fruit of the action completely. Every time you grip the outcome, every time you check whether the money has arrived, monitor whether the person has responded, measure whether the progress is fast enough, you have contracted back into personal intention. The channel closes. The larger force goes offline. You are back to running on your own engine, which is finite, which depletes, which hits the ceiling that personal will always hits. The result shows up when you stop monitoring for it. Not because reality is playing games with you, because the monitoring itself is the obstruction. The mental construct of the gap, the space between here and there that you're anxiously measuring, is the thing standing between you and the result. Remove the gap and the result arrives. Not as a reward for spiritual compliance, as the natural consequence of removing the obstruction. This sounds simple. It is the hardest thing most people will ever attempt. Because personal intention is not just a strategy, it is an identity. The person who makes things happen through force is who you believe you are. Releasing that, even experimentally, feels like perishing. Because at the level of the small self, the constructed identity, the ego, it is, in a sense, exactly that. The small self loosens its grip on the result, and something larger takes over. That loosening is the entire game. Everything in Patanjali's system is designed to create that loosening. Every practice is, at some level, an exercise in releasing what the small self is gripping. Every stage of development is characterized by a deeper layer of grip releasing. And at the end of the path, in full samadhi, in the state the advanced yogis inhabit, the grip is entirely gone. What remains is pure awareness in perfect alignment with the larger current. And from that alignment, reality is not influenced, it is generated. Everything we've covered, the mirror of karma, the two intentions, the deeper layer of consciousness, the specific discoveries in the book, is pointing at a single mechanism, the one that determines everything else. Identity, not your personality, not how you present yourself, not the story you tell about who you are. The deep, structural, below-conscious bedrock assumption about what kind of being you are and what level of reality belongs to you. Patanjali calls this asmita, the I-making faculty, the deep mechanism that constructs the sense of a separate self. And the Autobiography makes clear through story after story that the fundamental work of every yogi is at this level. Not on behavior, not on strategy, on the self that the behavior and the strategy are coming from. Here is the mechanism, and it is exact. Every external result in your life is a projection of your identity. In the technical sense, a film projector projects an image onto a screen. The screen is passive. The film generates the image. Your identity is the film. Your life is the screen. The image on the screen, your income, your relationships, your health, your recurring patterns, is the exact projection of the film currently running. You can change what's on the screen without changing the film. New job, new relationship, new city, new strategy. The same image will reproduce because the same film is running. This is why the patterns persist. The lottery winner who is broke within 5 years is not irresponsible. Their identity, the film, is calibrated for a specific level of financial reality. When the external jumps beyond what the film projects, the system restores equilibrium. The screen reverts to the image the film generates. The yogic tradition names this with language that doesn't have a direct English equivalent. There is the jiva, the individual constructed self, the wave, the identity formed by experience, conditioning, and the accumulated weight of every conclusion the nervous system has drawn about what is real and what is safe. And there is the Atman, the universal self, the ocean, the field of pure awareness that is the actual deepest nature of every human being without exception. The jiva believes itself to be separate. It experiences itself as a finite individual in a world that is external to it and largely indifferent to its desires. This belief, not a philosophical belief but a deep somatic, structural belief encoded in the nervous system, is the source of every limitation you experience. The ceiling on your income, the pattern in your relationships, the stuck point in your creative work, these are all, at their root, expressions of the jiva's belief in its own separateness and limitation. The Atman, the deeper self, has none of these limitations. It is not separate from reality. It is the field from which reality emerges. It does not experience ceilings because it is the intelligence that runs the system. It does not experience scarcity because it is the source from which all forms emerge. It does not experience powerlessness because it is, in the yogic framework, the actual engine of physical reality. The entire system of practices is designed to do one thing: thin the wall between jiva and Atman, to make the wave thin enough that the ocean shines through it. And as that wall thins, as the identity shifts from the small constructed self toward the deeper universal self, the projection changes, because the film is being replaced. This is the mechanism behind every genuine transformation that has ever occurred in human history. Not better information, not more effort, not the right technique. A film change, a moment where the deep identity encountered something real enough to revise its foundational assumption about what is possible for a being like this. The practices create those moments, consistently, repeatedly, over 90 days and beyond. And the accumulation of those moments changes the film structurally. The ceiling that was always just an assumption in the deep identity stops holding. Not because you overcame it, because you stopped generating it. Everything I've described is theory until you do the work, and the work is specific. Here are the 4 practices that address the mechanisms we've covered. They are drawn directly from Patanjali's system and from the specific techniques Yogananda describes and recommends throughout the Autobiography. They are designed to produce perceptible results within 30 days of consistent daily application. Practice 1. Kriya breath, the energy reversal. This is the foundational practice. Before your phone, before any external input, 20 minutes, every morning, non-negotiable. Here is the mechanism you're working with. Your energy in ordinary waking life flows outward, into thought, into reaction, into the world. This outward flow is what generates the experience of being a person subject to circumstances. Kriya-style pranayama reverses this direction. It draws energy inward and upward through the spine. And as the direction of energy flow changes, so does the quality of consciousness. You move from reactive to generative, from subject to source. The specific practice: sit upright, spine straight. Inhale deeply for a count of 6, feeling the breath rise from the base of the spine upward through the crown of the head. Hold at the top for 4 counts. Exhale for a count of 12, feeling the breath descend from the crown back down through the spine to the base. This completes 1 cycle. Do 12 cycles. This is not just a breathing exercise. It is, as Yogananda describes, a direct intervention in the energy system. You are manually redirecting the current. You are giving the system a taste of what it feels like to run inward rather than outward. Do this every day for 30 days, and something in the default direction of your energy will begin to shift. The reactive quality of ordinary experience will begin to decrease. The sense of spaciousness, of being slightly less at the mercy of circumstances, will begin to increase. This is real. This is the mechanism working. The final 5 minutes of the 20. Absolute stillness. Eyes closed. No technique. Just witness whatever arises without engaging with it. This is the beginning of pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses, which is the gateway to everything deeper in the system. Practice 2. The Karma mirror. Every evening, 30 minutes, paper and pen, no phone, no music. This practice is based directly on Yogananda's description of the karma mechanism, the perfect mirror between internal state and external experience. You're going to use your external life as a diagnostic tool to map your internal patterns. At the top of the page, 1 external area where you are stuck. Income, a specific relationship, a recurring health issue, a creative block, a pattern of behavior you cannot seem to change. Then you write the question. If this is a perfect mirror, what is it reflecting? And you write, without censoring, without managing, without defending. You follow every thread. You ask, where did I first encounter this pattern? What was I taught to believe about this area? What does this stuck point protect me from? What would I have to give up believing if this changed? The first answers will be surface, things you already know, things that feel true but have no charge. You go deeper. You stay with the question. You do not stop until you find the belief that has charge, the one that makes you slightly defensive to look at directly, the one you would prefer not to see. That belief is the film. That is what is generating the reflection you've been calling your circumstances. Seeing it clearly does not automatically change it, but it makes changing it possible. What lives in the dark runs you automatically. What you can see clearly, you can begin to work with. 30 days of this practice, and you will have a map of your internal architecture that most people never develop in a lifetime. Practice 3. The transmission practice. Yogananda makes a specific claim in the Autobiography about the effect of the advanced yogi's presence on people around them. The transmission is real, the field is real. Your internal state is broadcasting and people are receiving it. This practice turns that understanding into a daily tool. Once per day for 20 minutes, you enter a public environment, a coffee shop, a workspace, a train, and you consciously hold a specific internal state, not a performance, an actual state. You sit in the felt sense of genuine expansiveness, clarity, and goodwill. Not manufactured, not forced. You access it through the breath, through dropping the internal commentary, through deliberately releasing whatever you were gripping before you entered. Then you observe what happens around you, how people respond to your presence, whether the quality of interactions shifts, whether strangers make eye contact differently, whether conversations open or close. You are training two things simultaneously: the ability to access and sustain a chosen internal state in an external environment without being pulled into reaction, and the ability to observe, with the detachment of a scientist, the effect of your internal state on the external world around you. This practice will give you direct experiential evidence of the mechanism Yogananda describes. You will see in real time that your internal state is not private. It transmits, it affects, it shapes what is returned to you from the environment. And once you have seen this directly, the entire yogic framework stops being theory and becomes data. Practice 4. The weekly Sankalpa. Once per week, 1 hour. Sankalpa is the Sanskrit word for intention, but the deep kind, not the surface wish. The bone-deep whole-system commitment that originates from the Atman rather than from the Jiva. Here is the distinction Patanjali makes that the modern manifestation world misses entirely. A surface intention is generated by the small self and aimed at a specific form. This amount of money, this relationship, this recognition. A deep intention is generated from the deeper self and aimed at a direction, alignment with what is true, expansion of consciousness, genuine contribution. The small intention fights against the current. The deep intention moves with it. For 60 minutes you work on clarifying your deep intention. Not what you want in specific form. What direction is genuinely yours? What you would build and create if the outcome were guaranteed? What you would do if you stopped trying to prove something to anyone? What is the thing that, when you imagine being aligned with it, produces not excitement, but a kind of quiet recognition? A sense of course. That's it. That's what I'm for. Write it. Refine it. Hold it. And then, this is the critical step. Release it. Completely. Write explicitly. I release attachment to the specific form this takes. I release the timeline. I release the need for it to look the way I imagine. I commit to moving in this direction with everything I have, and I release the result to the intelligence that actually runs things. Then sit in stillness for 10 minutes and genuinely let go. This practice, done weekly, recalibrates the fundamental relationship between your individual will and the larger current. It prevents both the burnout of pure personal intention and the paralysis of pure passive waiting. It trains the effort-surrender balance that Patanjali identifies as the essential condition for genuine results. And over time, it does something that nothing else can do. It moves the source of your actions from the Jiva to the Atman, from the wave to the ocean. Let me tell you what actually happens when you do this work. Not the sales pitch, the honest account. Days 1 through 10. Resistance. The breath practice will feel mechanical. The karma mirror will produce surface answers you already know. The transmission practice will feel self-conscious and strange. The sankalpa practice will feel vague. This is exactly what is supposed to happen. Your system is encountering something genuinely different and doing what systems do when they encounter something different. It resists. Do not negotiate with the resistance. The resistance is not a sign you're doing it wrong. It is the precise signal that you are doing it right. Push through it. The first 10 days are a test of whether you will continue when there is no result yet. Most people fail this test. Don't fail this test. Days 11 through 30. The first cracks. Something will happen in this window that you cannot explain by coincidence. A conversation that opens an unexpected door. A thought that arrives with unusual clarity and turns out to be correct. A pattern you suddenly recognize in real time, in the middle of the behavior, not 3 days later, and can choose differently for the first time. These moments will be small. Do not dismiss them. They are the mechanism beginning to work. They are the film starting to update. Days 30 through 60, acceleration and its cost. This is the most disorienting phase. Your perception begins to outpace your relationships. You will be in a conversation and see its structure before it completes. You will recognize the pattern in someone's behavior before they've expressed it. You will understand what's actually happening in a situation, while everyone else is still reacting to the surface. And you will not be able to share this without sounding arrogant or strange. This is the cognitive loneliness Patanjali calls viveka khyati, the clarity of discrimination. It is the price of seeing accurately. It is not negotiable. Some relationships will not survive this phase, not because you've become better than the people in them, because shared reality is the foundation of connection. When your reality shifts and theirs doesn't, the connection strains. Some will break. Let them. The connections you'll form on the other side of this development will be unlike anything available before it, because they will be built on genuine recognition, rather than the comfortable shared unconsciousness of people who've never questioned the surface together. Days 60 through 90. Stabilization. The practices become habitual. Your brain begins to do the karma mirror automatically throughout the day, seeing the pattern behind an event without having to sit with a journal to find it. The breath practice drops you into a different quality of consciousness in minutes, rather than fighting you for 20. The transmission practice shows you consistent evidence of the mechanism. The Sankalpa practice begins to show results in external reality that are too specific and too well-timed to dismiss. And then the real costs arrive. The comfortable numbness goes. Every technology of modern life, the phone, the screen, the noise, the busyness, is, at its root, a technology for not being fully present to the fact that you're alive. This practice dismantles it. You will feel more. Joy sharper, loss sharper, the ache of wasted time sharper. The felt sense of being alive increases, and it includes everything. This is not a side effect. This is the point. Your certainty will diminish. You will stop being sure about things you were previously certain of. Fixed positions will soften. This feels like loss of clarity, but is actually gain of accuracy. Reality is not binary. The mind that can hold complexity without collapsing it is more powerful than the one that was comfortably certain about a simplified version of things. And the loneliness, it is real. It is ongoing. It is the price of clarity, and it does not fully go away. But here is what Yogananda promises, and what I've found to be true. On the other side of that loneliness are the people who have done this work. And when you find them, you will not have to translate. You will not have to perform. You will not have to manage the gap between what you're actually perceiving and what is safe to say. The relief of that connection is almost physical. Those relationships are rare. They are worth everything the path costs to reach them. Einstein spent the last decade of his life trying to find a unified field theory, a single equation that would describe the fundamental force underlying all of physical reality. He never found it. He died without it. He kept this book on his desk for that entire decade, I don't think that's a coincidence. Because what Patanjali described 2,000 years ago, what Yogananda documented through witnessed, notarized, published evidence, is a unified field, not a mathematical one, an experiential one. A field of pure consciousness that underlies all of physical reality the way the ocean underlies every wave. A field that is not separate from the consciousness reading these words right now. A field that is, at your deepest layer, what you are. You do not need to levitate. You do not need to bilocate. You do not need to live without food. You need the version of this that applies to your actual life. The ceiling that won't move. The pattern that keeps reproducing. The gap between what you know you're capable of and what you're currently producing. That gap has a name in the yogic framework. It is the distance between the jiva and the atman. The distance between the wave and the ocean. The distance between the film you're running and the light that could project anything. Closing that distance is the only work that actually changes anything, and it is work that almost no one in the popular conversation is pointing you toward, because it cannot be sold in a course, it cannot be completed in a weekend, and it does not produce the kind of quick, visible result that builds a large following quickly. It produces something else. It produces, slowly and then suddenly, a life that was not available to the version of you that started. Patanjali says the results are inevitable, not possible, not likely, inevitable. For the person who applies this science with full commitment and genuine surrender, the outcomes will arrive with the same certainty that water flows downhill when the obstruction is removed. You are the obstruction. The practices remove it. The only question that remains is the one that has been waiting underneath everything in this video since the first minute. Are you going to go to the depth where your actual life is waiting for you? Or are you going to find this interesting? Feel something move in you briefly, and then return to the surface where it's comfortable and nothing changes. You already know which one you're going to do. The only question left is whether you'll be honest about it. Now you have a choice. You can't pretend you didn't hear this. You can close this video right now. Go back to your ceiling, your recycled patterns, your comfortable stagnation. Keep working harder on the wrong layer of reality. Keep solving the reflection instead of the source. Nothing will change. You already know that. You've known it for a while. Or you can decide right now that you are done operating on the surface of your own life. If that's you, do two things. Subscribe, not for content, not for entertainment, as a contract with the version of you that already knows this is the work that matters. Then drop 3 words in the comments. I choose depth. That comment is your declaration. Your first move at the level where things actually change. Your line in the sand between the person who watched this and the person who actually went there. The newsletter below is where the real work lives. The deeper teachings this video only open the door to. Most people won't do this. Prove you're not most people.